Okay, I'm sorry. So I'm Rani Polak. I'm the program director of the chef coaching program, and I'm here with Laura Klein, who is the marketing director of the chef coaching program and also a faculty. And this is the first time that we are offering the talk insights from our culinary coaching research, and we plan to do it twice a year, just to share the most updated research from our group. So let's start with a little bit of preliminary data and background. So why home cooking is so important? This is just an example, a cohort from the UK, more than 11,000 people, and they answered many questions. And one of the question was, how many home cooked dinner do you consume? And they divided the group into three subgroups: those who consume less than 3 home cooked dinners a week, those who consume 3 to 5, and those who consumed over 5 home cooked dinners a week. And you can see that actually, as much as you as much as you consume more home cooked food, you actually consume more fruits. You consume more vegetables. If you look at the overall dietary score, your diet is more aligned with the Dutch diet score and the Mediterranean diet score, which are two of the most healthiest diets. So there is probably something to home cooking, because when they ask the people how many home cooked dinners they consume, they didn't ask about healthy cooking. They didn't ask about using healthy culinary skills. They just ask about how many home cooked dinners people consume. If you look at other studies, so this is another an important example, and this is a sub-analysis of two of the major nutritional trials that were conducted worldwide, the North Health Study and the Health Professionals follow-up studies, more than 2 million persons years of follow-up. And they didn't look only at dinners, they looked at lunches and dinners. And this is why the MPAH, the meals prepared at home, is between 0 to 11. And they found that those who eat 11 to 14 meals prepared at home had lower risk to develop type 2 diabetes compared to those who eat 0 to 6 meals prepared at home. And they also found that this is most probably because of less weight gain in those who consume home-cooked food. And let's look at the other side of this coin, those who consume ultra-processed food. And there are many studies that were published in the past 2-3 years that looked at ultra-processed food consumption. Very, very large cohorts. This is just one example. Almost 20,000 participants from Spain, aged 20 to 91, and they looked at the correlation between ultra-processed food and all-cause mortality. And they found that those who consume more ultra-processed food has a 62% relatively increased for all-cause mortality. Actually, each additional serving of ultra-processed food increased all-cause mortality by 18%. If you want to dive deeper into that, so again, another study from the BMJ, they really like this topic. Again, an even larger cohort, over 100,000 adults over 18. And they found that as much as people consume more ultra-processed food, they are more likely to have cancer. mostly breast cancer. And this is another study, the correlation between ultra-processed food consumptions and cardiovascular disease. As much as you consume more home-cooked food, more ultra-processed food, you are more likely to have cardiovascular event. And you know, and another evidence which is really, really interesting. So we know that people that consume ultra-processed food consume more refined grain, and we know that they consume a more saturated fatty acid, and they know that they consume more sodium, more sugar, less dietary fibers. We know all that. But most of the studies showed again and again and again that the correlation between ultra-processed food consumption and, for example, in cardiovascular disease are beyond the increased consumption of all this unhealthy nutrient. There is something in ultra-processed food that is not healthy, which is not only the unhealthy micro and macronutrients that people consume. Another very interesting study that was published in Cell Metabolism, and this is from the NIH, and we are moving from cohort studies to intervention studies. So this is a small study, only 20 patients, but it was published in a very important journal because the methodology was very interesting. Because what they did, they took the 20 patients and admit them, and they receive for 14 days, 10 of them received ultra-processed food, and 10 of them received minimally processed food, like home-cooked food. And the beauty of this study is that the two diets were matched for calories and sugars and fat and fibers and all the macronutrients. And after 14 days, they switch between the groups. So we have in this cohort 20 patients that for 14 days received ultra-processed food, and for 14 days received home-cooked food. And look at the very interesting outcomes. In just 14 days, during the ultra-processed food diet, people gain almost 1 kilo. And during the same 14 days, when they consumed unprocessed food, they lost 1 kilo. And it's important to know that they could eat as much as they want. The only instruction was to eat either ultra-processed food or unprocessed food. And another interesting evidence is that during the ultra-processed food consumption, people consume 500 calories more. And this might be one of the reasons for the weight difference. Again, I mean, the question is why? Why this is happening? And we don't know much yet. You know, we know that, for example, maybe a decade ago or 20 years ago, the trans fat was highlighted as one food items that people consume in ultra-processed food diet, which is extremely not healthy. But actually, in ultra-processed food diet, there are, you know, so many, like hundreds of food additives and food items and food preservatives that, you know, we don't really know what is their impact. And this is one study that was published 2 years ago in Science Translational Medicine. And this group looked at propionate. And again, this is just one example of food preservative that you can find. It's a very popular food preservative. And what they did, they did a reanalysis of the direct study, if you're familiar with the DIRECT study, is a study that was published in New England Journal like a decade ago. And they found that propionate was correlated with insulin resistance. So as much as you consume more propionate, you are more likely to have insulin resistance. And this is unrelated to calorie consumption, unrelated to weight, and unrelated to any other parameter. And again, this is just the second example of the impact of ultra-processed food and why home cooking is so important. You know, the next question could be, what's the impact of home cooking intervention? And home cooking intervention becomes more and more popular. And two systematic reviews was published in the last decade that looked at outcomes of home cooking interventions. And the results of these two systematic reviews is that home cooking intervention improve cooking knowledge, skills, confidence, and also diet quality. But probably because this is like new field, we still need well-designed studies that will evaluate long-term impact of home cooking interventions. And this is actually what we are doing in the chef coaching program. So for the past 2 years, we run a multi-center randomized controlled trial that looked at the outcomes of home cooking intervention for up to 1 year. We are recruiting 72 patients. Actually, we still need to recruit, I think, maybe 4 patients to this study with overweight and obesity. We are recruiting BMI from 27.5 up to 35. And the primary outcome of our study is 5% weight loss in 6 months. The method that we are working with is exactly the culinary coaching program for patients that we have. These are 12 30-minute televisits that we run through the Zoom. And the meetings are focusing on setting and reviewing culinary goals. We are using motivational interviewing. We brainstorm how to overcome culinary challenges. We are focusing on plant-based whole food cooking, but we usually meet our participants where they are. If someone eats a lot of meat and just want to reduce his meat consumption, for example, so we help them to only reduce their meat consumption. Those who wants to consume more fish, those who wants to consume more legumes, we meet people when they are, and we help them to move into plant-based whole food cooking. And we have many resources and recipes and videos that we are sharing with our participants as needed. So these are the preliminary outcomes of this study, and let's start with nutrition. And you can see that there is a very nice difference between the ultra processed food consumption of our intervention group and the control group. As you can see, we only have 24 out of the 72 participants that we are planning to recruit that reach the 6 months point, 11 from the intervention and 13 from the control. But you know, even if with these 24 participants, we already have a very nice significant difference between the ultra processed food consumption of the intervention and the control. You can see that maybe this different in the ultra processed food and maybe from other reasons, there is a very nice difference in the weight of the participants from those who arrived to the 6 month point. We have a weight loss of little bit over 4% in the intervention group compared to the control group who lost less than 1% of their body weight. And we actually have 11 people that finished the study, finished the 12 months follow-up. And I included also, their outcomes in this slide. Although we have very few people, but it's really interesting to see that the weight loss is maintained for up to 1 year. You can see that the intervention group here, the weight loss is almost the same as in the 6 months point, and the control group even gain weight in 1 year. What's also really interesting is if you look at the calorie intake of the intervention group versus the control group, so we don't see we don't see significant difference in the calorie consumptions. So the only significant difference that we see is ultra processed food versus minimally processed food. And I really don't know what caused the weight loss of the intervention group, but this is I think it's not calorie, or even or maybe it was slightly caused by calorie, but there is much more to minimally processed food or home cooking versus ultra processed food, and we saw that in previous studies, such as the one that present the impact of the propionate, and the one that looked at the correlation between ultra processed food and cardiovascular diseases. All those studies that I presented help us to understand that the benefit of home cooking is beyond calories, and the benefit is home cooking might be beyond the healthier macro and micronutrients, and we will still need to see what exactly is the mechanism. I would also like to share that I don't know if we were lucky or not lucky, but the fact is that we started the study a few months before March 2020, where the COVID pandemic was everywhere, and actually all the study ran through the Corona time. So and the weight loss and the weight gain that you saw in the control group was during the pandemic. So we also tried to see if there is any connection between the program and coping strategies that related to the pandemic, and any relationship between the home cooking intervention that we offered and the resiliency of the participant. So the outcomes here are not as strong as our other outcomes because we didn't anticipated that the COVID will come. So we don't have any baseline data. We just interview people during the COVID, but we found very interesting results. I mean, we found that self-care and home cooking was a important coping strategy of our intervention group versus the control group. We also found that our intervention group was somewhat more resilient than the control group. This outcome is not significant, is not statistically significant. We didn't have enough power because we were looking only at the people that did the intervention during the first wave of the pandemic. But home cooking intervention could be a very interesting coping strategy for participants. So this is like the most updated data that we have from our study, and I'll open the meeting for questions and discussion about those interesting outcomes. But just before I'm doing this, I just want to remind those of you who are new here, new to us, that we have 2 cohorts per year that we train clinicians to deliver the culinary coaching program. We call this medical education program Clinicians Chef Coaching. It includes 2 modules: Chef Coaching the Basics and Chef Coaching Beyond the Basics. Those who complete the training receive certificate of completion in culinary coaching. And there are people that take this training and just implement tools and principles to their routine. And there are people who really become culinary coach and deliver culinary coaching programs in their practice. This is the chef coaching team. Here is the research team that did all the work that I just described. This is the education team that train other clinicians to do this work. And if you would like to stay connected to us, so we have a mailing list that we share resources, we share recipes, and you can also follow us on Twitter and in Facebook. We also share about our upcoming programs, upcoming events, and also share resources and recipes and great stuff that can help you to be better providers. Thank you so much for joining me, and let's open for questions.